welcome to another episode of the Learning to Choose podcast, episode number 10 with Nile Fortner. I am your host, arts advocate, community builder, creative entrepreneur, and author behind Learning to Choose, Evan Snow. This new podcast series was created with the goal to discuss the stories behind pivotal choices, learning lessons, and takeaways from interesting individuals coming from various backgrounds and walks of life who have lived extraordinary lives. For more information on Learning to Choose and our author and host, log on to learningtochoose.com. Nile Fortner is a committed, creative, and collaborative multimedia journalist who is known for his local coverage throughout articles, stories, podcasts, and more. Nile, who is a graduate from FAU, has written for and continues to work with the Sun-Sentinel, Miami New Times, Fort Lauderdale Magazine, the new Pelican Newspaper, Miami Herald's insert M.I.A, and Legacy Embrace Magazine, and more. With some of his work even being cover stories for some of South Florida's newspapers, he also works in social media management and content creation, such as content for the Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival, otherwise known as FLIF, Venice Fort Lauderdale Magazine, My South Florida Today, Yacht Life TV, and more. Nile has also been a podcaster for Boca First, Cinefellas, Choose 954, and has worked on various public relations campaigns. When Nile's not at his favorite South Florida spots like Tate's Comics or Wynwood, you can find him at the movies, reading comic books, and enjoying warm, soft to the bite chocolate chip cookies, the quickest way to his heart. But without much further ado, I do want to thank you, Nile, for taking the time for your ongoing support, coverage, and participation in our efforts. And we're very proud to support you being a fellow, Broward native here. So for those that are not familiar with you and your work, why don't you give us a little bit of a high-level overview around how you initially learned to choose and kind of get started in the media, multimedia, marketing, and public relations space here in South Florida.
All right. Well, I just wanted to say thank you, Evan, for having me on. And, I obviously had to plug Choose 954 in there because, that's what we do.
Hey.
But honestly, I guess life is about, choices like you're saying and with your book and just Choose 954. But for me, I just wanted to get into media, local media, actually, just from me wanting to tell stories. I always loved stories since I was a kid. I remember like my dad getting me a big box of comic books, which is funny. I just got back from Phil's Comics yesterday. But I remember liking those characters like, Batman, Superman, Spider-Man. And I would also watch movies and like look at characters. And I said to myself, why is it that so many people will cheer for a Spider-Man or they'll cheer for, a Rocky Balboa, but they don't cheer for their neighbor or somebody in their community? So I'm like, why don't I try taking my interest in characters and movies, but applying those same elements that you would see in those characters with the actual people in, South Florida, whether they be from West Palm to Miami. So let's say, like, if I'm writing about you, for instance, I would be like, okay, what do we know about Evan Snow? The same way people would say, okay, what do we know about Batman that makes us want to cheer for those characters? But honestly, I chose to do that. Like, some people like it, some people don't. But I said to myself, I want to choose why people have a reason to not only cheer for their neighbors, but their friends, their families, people in their community. And also it gives people a reason to be informed on their community as well. So that was just something I chose to do. And I'm very thankful that I chose that, because I could have chose a variety of different things, which I'm sure we'll get into later.
We're very thankful as well, because you have done a phenomenal job, very humbly and modestly, in highlighting local people, especially local people that not just within the arts and culture, but even within like small businesses, within the various comic shops that you support. Niles contributed, as you mentioned, to Choose 954 and actually hosted our second season of our podcast episode, where he interviewed people I probably never just would have gotten to in all reality, from different backgrounds and walks of life. And one of the things that we've shared, we both, started off as writers. I started off on this journey, food blogging and covering local arts and then pivoting to covering local arts and culture. And then, that obviously paved the way for the work that I'm doing now with Zero Empty Spaces and so on and so forth. But I'd be interested to know, Nile, what were some of the early choices, maybe even back to middle school or high school, that you essentially began making that led you down this, media public relations path?
Well, honestly, it goes like you're saying back to like high school, even before that, like junior high. And I find so many people like they try to choose your path, but nobody wants to know the path you want to create for yourself, if that makes any sense. But when I was growing up, people wanted me to do sports so badly. Going back to even elementary school, they were like, you got to get this guy in football, basketball, and all these other things. And I did do some sports for a little bit in high school for a cup of coffee, literally. Didn't do it very long. And I was just not happy doing it. I said, I want to, I want to choose my own path. I don't want people to tell me what I should do with my life. So instead of, playing football or doing all of these other things or even trying to play basketball, I decided I just want to tell stories. Like that goes back to, being a kid, honestly. So I was just so miserable doing anything like that with the sports. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to just go to my school blog and see what's up. And I stopped doing the sports stuff, and people thought I was just making the biggest mistake. They were like, you're an idiot, and you suck pond water and all of these crazy things. But I knew this is what I wanted to choose for myself. So I got with the school blog. I started writing about students and school happenings. And I feel like that's where I found my calling. And I think that was the first time ever that I had a teacher. Well, maybe not the first time ever, but a teacher who really got behind me and said, you can do something with this. And I'm
What
like,
school was that?
That was Piper High School.
And are you able to plug the teacher?
Yeah, I believe he's still a teacher, Mr. Conde.
Nice.
Yeah, but I just remember feeling like that was the first time, like, wow, somebody, like I chose something and somebody's telling me I chose the right thing to do. And then I'm like, well, if I'm good enough to do this for school, once again, just making this choice, maybe I'm good enough to do this outside of school. And I did do it outside of school. And I just feel like if I didn't make that choice of making my own path, sometimes I wonder where I would honestly be. Maybe I would be, I don't know, some football guy or whatever, but that's not my calling. That's not what I want. That's not my slice of the pie to eat, honestly.
I give you a lot of credit and kudos for that. If you haven't met Nile in person, he's a big burly character, but a teddy bear of sorts. But it would have been easy to just do what everybody else says you should do, or quote unquote do what the book says to do. But I commend you for taking this other path, especially a path that unfortunately I have to say, and for those that are really not familiar with, writing, especially writing about the arts, unfortunately continually faces cuts from budgets. Newspapers have, unfortunately taken a hit over the evolution of the internet and blogs and, just the new world of media that we live in. So unfortunately, arts writing is not the same or not valued by the publications the same as it once used to be. So I commend you for not necessarily doing what the opposite of what everybody would tell you to do, but you literally have carved your own lane and you've made this niche. And some of the outlets that I've mentioned in the intro, between Venice Magazine, the Sun-Sentinel, the Herald, I mean, these are literally the highest level publications in South Florida. What would you say were some of the choices that you made once you graduated from FAU to position yourself? Because one thing I will commend you on is you're very active, you're very social, you're out there, you're networking, you've built a great name and a great reputation for yourself, deservedly so. So what were some of those choices, I guess, coming from the Piper High School experience, the FAU experience, to then like, this is what I want to do professionally, and I'm gonna put in the work to get these opportunities that I know I deserve?
Well, yeah, just going back to school for a little bit.
Sure.
I remember like when I wanted to go to FAU, people were like, "Why do you want to go to FAU?" I clearly remember this girl in my class named Amanda was like, "Why are you going to FAU when you can go to FIU?" And I'm like, "Well, FIU, I already know that like part of local community. FAU was something completely new. It was in Boca, and I'm like, let me move up north a little bit just to see what it's like." So once again, that was a choice to learn about a new location, learn about a new spot. And I did that because I just wanted to have more understanding of my community, even if it's a little further away. So I went to FAU, and while I was a student, I was still looking for publications to write for. And I had this guy come to my class named Al Zaccaro, and he's like, "Hey, would you students be interested in writing about Boca Raton?" And every kid in that class, every student was like, just not interested. He left his business cards, and out of all the business cards he left, I took that business card and I said, "I'm going to contact this guy." And I'm like, if I'm writing assignments in school, I might as well try and write something for him. And I was actually taking my old school assignments and giving them to Boca Watch, and they were publishing it. So I'm like, wow. So if it's good enough for school, then it's good enough for another publication, which was once again a choice because so many students choose, in my opinion, they actually choose just to go to school and do the bare minimum. But I'm like, if I'm actually going to be here, I might as well make the most of it. And that was one of the choices I made, like to really just get out of the classroom. I find too many students go from the classroom back home, and it's like, that gets repetitive, it gets boring, and it's not doing you any favors. So when I made that choice to really work with Al Zaccaro, I said, why don't we step out of the norm? I know Boca is most likely seen as an older city, older little location, but I said, why don't we talk about what's going on at FAU with the younger people? Why don't we talk about the arts in Boca? Why don't we try to increase the arts in Boca and get people's interest to actually come to Boca? And, I could have just did what they wanted me to do, which I did in all fairness, but I wanted to make that choice of let's do more than what people expect from us. And then once people noticed what was happening at Boca Watch, that was, I guess, building momentum. And then I was like on this adrenaline rush, like, okay, maybe I can choose other publications. And that's how it all happened.
Amazing. And I apologize. I realized I kind of brushed over the Boca FAU experience. But aside from Al, I know you definitely cemented yourself in Boca Raton and have made relationships with people like Jason from Shrimp Tank, and obviously within the university. Any takeaways or any other takeaways or any other noteworthy success stories? Any did you, if I recall, did you receive an award for writing when you were at FAU, or anything that potentially helped you on that journey to pursue this passion professionally from that college experience?
Yeah, definitely, because FAU was a new playground for me to play in. Honestly, it was an opportunity to meet people like shout out to Jason Hill. You know him very well from
Yep.
the Shrimp Tank. But it was just an opportunity for me to just meet new people, honestly, and within meeting new people, you know, new opportunities. But I think the award you're thinking of, and I feel like I'm bringing up ancient history, but that was actually for the school's NPR station, because I feel like I was just getting too known as the guy who just simply writes, and I was getting bored of that. So I said, "Well, what's another way I can tell these community stories?" And that's when I met Kevin Petrich. And I took his class, and I remember the first time I did, I was like really bad at it, but I got better at it with a little bit of practice, and those were the awards that I think you were talking about.
Yeah, very modest once again of Nile. The local NPR station, even if it was at FAU, that's still pretty noteworthy. And it's that's kind of why I like having these conversations and bringing up some of these memories, because you got to know where you came from to know where you're going. And also a very positive reminder for me that just came up kind of as a result of Nile. is to celebrate the wins when they happen or remember them from the past. I'm very grateful that Nile, God bless him, got me Sun-Sentinel newspaper editorial coverage of this little Learning to Choose book that just came out in print yesterday, literally, published online last week. And, I try not to lose sight or take these things for granted. Thankfully, the press has been very generous to, a lot of our causes and the work that we do between Zero Empty Spaces and the art fair and so on and so forth. But there's no guarantee that you're going to get another press hit. There's no guarantee that you're going to get another award or that you're going to get, nothing's guaranteed in life moving forward. So I actually wanted to find an opportunity, and I guess this is it, to, thank you publicly for not only all the support, previously up to this point that you've provided, but this last article that, came out in our county's, in our market's highest newspaper, the Sun-Sentinel. It really did mean a lot to me. It means a lot to my parents as well. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank you, for doing that, and let you know that wasn't lost on me at all.
Yeah, no problem. And I'll get you a newspaper copy, and I'll get Mama Snow a copy as well.
And Mama Snow appreciates it. She'll probably frame it. And, now I've known Nile, I guess going on 3 or 4 years now, from around the time of the pandemic. And one of the things that I've just kind of briefly mentioned, but it really, goes to show how hard work pays off with networking and relationship building. Even with the Jason Hill example, you knew Jason, you were on the Shrimp Tank podcast, you suggested I connect with him. I went on the Shrimp Tank podcast, got some interesting feedback and engagement and connections from going on this iHeartRadio syndicated podcast through FAU's College of Entrepreneurship and Jason's OWL app. Shout out to all the good people at FAU doing good work over there. And actually connecting some more dots, and this is very serendipitous, synchronistic timing. Jason's last guest yesterday was Lawrence Gartell, who's our upcoming Creative Zen speaker next month, the second Friday morning in January at NSU, which we could tell you about later. And it's just really interesting kind of to see some of these things come full circle. And you never know how kind of like connecting dots can literally change the course of your life, your community, or even the world at large. Now that you've been doing this and now that you've connected some dots, any takeaways or any learning lessons for you that maybe you would want to share with an aspiring writer, an aspiring multimedia professional, about, just kind of like getting out there, networking, putting your name out there, building a reputation, if they want to pursue a path similar to yours?
Yeah, definitely. It reminds me of when I was at FAU. I actually did give a little speech to Professor Prusher's class on freelance writing and journalism, and I'll share the same tips I shared with them with you guys. So one thing, if you want to be a writer, if you want to be a journalist, you have to start writing and you have to show something, even if it's a Facebook post, a blog post, just something that shows your writing. Even if you want to do social media management, something that's on social media, because I find so many people say, oh, I want to write for a newspaper. And the first thing these editors are going to say, the first thing I will even say is, what have you written? And if you don't have anything to show, that's not good. Even if it's something as simple as a Facebook post, just show me something. So I think it's actually, I don't want to say easier, but you have more access to writing these things. You have Facebook posts, you have Instagram posts, you can create a blog. So if you're saying you want to be a writer, if you want to be a journalist, have something to show. If you don't have anything to show, then honestly, they're not going to take a second look at you, or even
Correct.
a first look, honestly.
And in 2023, or almost now 2024, you can have your own channel, you could have your own blog, you could have, Substack, Medium, LinkedIn articles.
Yes.
You can contribute to Choose 954, the Broward Arts Journalism Alliance, or, other publications that do need content, that do need writers. And, it's interesting that you kind of mentioned some people do kind of discredit some of that college experience, but if that's all the experience that you have, I was a recruiter and I used to help people with their resumes, like, that's what you're going to put on your resume if you're getting started. And this is a friendly reminder to remind people that everyone started at zero. Even the, Jerry Saltz or like Pulitzer Prize winning, authors, everybody started at the same place with very humble beginnings. Sometimes they forget that, but we're here to remind you. It's also interesting that, you did put in a lot of work, and the fruits of your labor are starting to pay off. We've, want to support you the best way we can. So I'm going to ask a two-pronged question here. What's next, or what's in the future for Nile in 2024 and beyond? And what are some things that maybe somebody listening could reach out and engage you on should they want to hire you or have you create content for them?
Well, honestly, moving into 2024 and beyond, I'm seen as just the writer, but I want people to understand I have done more, I can do more. I do the social media management as well. So I think I almost push the fact that I'm a writer and a journalist maybe a little too hard, because that's all people see me as, which isn't, and I don't have a problem with that at all. But I would like if people could see me as someone who can do just more than that. I can do social media management. I also dipped my toes in public relations for a little bit, not just with the GAB group, but with the film festival in Fort Lauderdale. And I feel like I could just bring more to the table, honestly. I wouldn't mind trying to do public relations again. I wouldn't mind doing more social media management. And honestly, if somebody wants to bring me on board, I would be more than happy to speak with them and just get a good understanding of how they work. And one thing I think they should know about me is I don't half-ass things. If I don't think something's a good idea, I'm not going to give it to you. I'm not going to present it to you. If I'm giving you something, I'm presenting you with something, I feel like it's at least presentable.
Amen. Takes a lot of pride in his work. I'm going to throw out a couple ideas for perspective. Maybe a company that's listening, or somebody in a marketing department, or that works in marketing or works in public relations. You could hire Nile to write blog posts, copy. I don't know if you really want to get into editing so much, but there's definitely opportunities for freelance writers to supplement your brand, your company, your business's marketing efforts and campaigns. You'll always need content. There's never a shortage of content or content opportunities. On the public relations side of things, people could always benefit from a good press release. And also, even on the multimedia side of things, I've seen you out now at events over the years where you were either capturing content on behalf of yourself for your brand and your own efforts. And I've also seen you capture content on behalf of brands. Actually, not only on behalf of brands, but also on behalf of the publications. Some of the content would be used, in a recap video or in a recap post. Some of the content could be used for future marketing campaigns and efforts to help visually storytell what maybe the next year's event will look like, for example. So there's definitely opportunities for multimedia professionals, and one I think that I might even look to seed with you. I don't know if you know Christina Nicholson, but she was
I do,
a former
of Media Maven. I know her.
Correct.
I wrote about her, and I did a podcast episode with her. She's awesome.
I had a feeling you did. It's a small world. She pivoted, evolved from being a former anchor, TV host, to getting in the public relations space, to even getting in like coaching and consulting. So you never really know how one thing will lead to another, we're always learning, we're always growing, we're always evolving. There's always the new thing, the next thing. But with that being the case, you are very well read, you are very well researched, you are very well spoken. What are some recommendations that you have for anybody, or as it relates to this conversation, anybody that's interested, I guess, in content or press or media marketing, uh, recommendations between podcasts or books, or I'll save the movies, that'll be a later question, but anything that you generally like to recommend that's helped you on your journey here?
Yes, just two things. One, don't be afraid to walk up to people. I was just talking with a friend the other day, and I said, if I'm at an event, if I'm somewhere, if I see somebody that I feel like speaking to and introducing myself, I know that may be seen as a little odd nowadays, but there's nothing wrong with shaking somebody's hand or giving a business card. And I feel like that's, for some reason, has gone away. But for me, that's an aspect I want to keep. Like there's nothing like that physical touch, that physical moment. The other thing is choose how you want to use social media. Social media was a big one for me because I remember when I first got on social media, I actually avoided it for years. I'm like, I don't want to really be on this thing. It's like being out in the Wild West. You don't know what's going to happen. But I'm like, no, I'm going to use this thing. I'm going to look through hashtags. I'm going to start posting content so people know what I do and what I'm aware of. And surprisingly, people came to me because of social media, and I went to them because of social media. I literally will just send a message, hey, I saw you in Voyage M.I.A. or Shout Out Miami, or hey, I'm a writer, I would like to tell your story. And I feel like just using social media for work is a big thing. Of course, I'm like everybody else. I share memes and food pics and oh, Donna has a nice new photo or whatever. But other than that, it's like no, really use this thing to be social with people. That's what it's called. It's social media, and I think people take the social part out of it and they just see it as media. But no, it's the opportunity to be social. For instance, I may want to write about somebody and I'm like, hey, I see you have a nice brand. I'm a writer. Hey, why don't we have a 5-minute phone call, 10-minute phone call, or and just see where we can take this thing? And it's actually worked. That's how I actually got my little, I don't want to say gig, but my little work with the Herald insert M.I.A. legacy. I was just posting my stuff on LinkedIn, and then somebody said, I see your LinkedIn profile. Why don't you come write for us? And that was, what, 2-3 years ago? And I'm still writing for them, all because I decided to post something on social media.
It's a beautiful thing when it works. It very well can work. I would be remiss to say that I would not be sitting here having this conversation with you if it wasn't for social media, if it wasn't for me taking a hashtag and just wanting to show the people that I grew up with in my native Broward County all of these cool things that were going on in downtown Fort Lauderdale in Flagler Village in 2015, 2016, as the art walk was just starting to pick up from tens of people to dozens of people to hundreds of people, that I felt if I could show the people that I grew up with that I didn't see out and about in Broward County or in downtown Fort Lauderdale anymore, it would give them reasons to, quote unquote, choose the 954. And as the story goes, and as you can read and learning to choose, fortunately, starting that social movement, blog platform at the time, which really, transparently, I really had no idea what I was doing. I really had no idea how I was going to monetize. I really had no idea what the future was going to hold for me as I jumped into entrepreneurville, leaving the recruiting world. Having that Choose 954 social movement was all I really needed when, fortunately, the universe put me in the right place at the right time with a woman that I had met out at events that I liked going to, Creative Mornings, a monthly breakfast lecture series, where fortunately she invited me to a TEDx simulcast event at the Tower Club, where after the event there was an opportunity to network. Some old gray-haired guy said, hey, tell me about you and what do you do? And I said, well, I, just started this Choose 954 thing. And that old gray hair guy really could have cared less what I had to say at this, members only club that I had never been to before, that I don't even know how I stumbled into, and deserved that invitation. But fortunately, as the story goes, there was a very sharply dressed Trinidadian brother with a Dali mustache and a Zara suit sitting to the other side of me that overheard what I had to say, took an interest in Choose 954, started meeting me for coffee, and lo and behold, that ended up being Andrew. And lo and behold, we started our Fort Lauderdale, which led to us growing Choose 954, which led to Lauderdale Art Week, which led to Zero Empty Spaces, and which led to, so many other things. So many lives changed. And I, now that I kind of just spelled that out, I mean, I literally am not blowing smoke. I would not be sitting here if it wasn't for starting off very humble beginnings as a food blogger, and fortunately making a series of choices primarily outside of my comfort zone that allowed me to unlock my hidden potential to change my life, my community, the world, the art world, and beyond. So you really never know how a connection, a blog, a social media post, a hashtag, or any of those things can really change your life. So I really appreciate you kind of spelling some of this out, kind of connecting the dots, because you never know how even just listening to you share your story transparently, how that can kind of help the next Nile Fortner, the next wave, the next generation. I guess with that being the case, what do you see the future of media, multimedia, writing, publications? How do you see things kind of evolving in this space for our current generation and maybe for the next generation of writers or, people that want to be in the media space?
Honestly, when people want to be in media, I feel like it goes back to what I said earlier with like the blogging or even YouTube. People don't even realize it, but they're doing media. It's like everyone works in media. It's not like to say, like, oh, I work in media. Excuse me. It's not like, oh, I work in media, and it's like, oh, you're a rare dozen now. But it's like, no, everybody with a phone works in media. If you do Instagram videos or podcast or blogging, or you write for the Sun-Sentinel, it's like everyone works in media. So I feel like that's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing, because the good thing is it gives those who feel voiceless a voice. But it might be a bad thing because, well, if everybody has a voice, you don't really know who to listen to. And also, you have to compete with other people now. But I think it's going to be more where media goes towards the general public. Like everybody can say they work in media.
Amen. There's another young man from Broward County that has built up quite a social following and actually produces some pretty good reporting in his own regard. He created his own online TV channel, primarily covering a lot of the news that probably won't make the news per se,
Mm-hmm.
in on the traditional like Channel 10, Channel 7. His Instagram is the Breaking News Reporter. They call me Kid and Play. He has the high top Kid and Play fade. I mean, he's got 56,000 followers on Instagram. His channel is Welcome to Action 55 Community News. He does, brand it accordingly. I don't believe that it is on YouTube, but I don't believe it's actually on syndicated television yet. But what I appreciate, I mean, he literally goes to the scene of like crimes and car accidents and a lot of things that I probably would want to know are happening in the community that for various reasons, ABC, NBC, Fox News just doesn't cover. And, maybe there's just not enough, reporters and not enough time in the nightly news session. And I have noticed, I've been following him for a little bit now, he has gotten advertisers and he is evolving, and he is finding ways to include those advertisers in these new segments. And I do believe, if I recall, just to wrap up this story here, he did work for the news station. I don't know if it was Channel 10, I believe. And I think he lost his job, and he shared kind of publicly on his social media. I guess they didn't. He was maybe the behind the scenes, one of the camera people, and I guess they might not have liked that he was kind of diverting some of his energy and attention to his own personal brand. And now, from what I gather from what he posts, he is going full time in pursuing this brand, pursuing this channel, and it is something that I've shared with him that I'm glad to support and share, because we do need more people that are telling the real news. And I won't get into the whole fake news thing and all that, but in 2024, 2025 and beyond, you can carve out your own lane. You can carve out your own niche. You can get on Substack. You can get on Medium. I was told yesterday Quora actually has like a lot of SEO benefits to help you extend your reach. Any other sites, platforms, outlets, resources that you might recommend that maybe are off my purview and radar as well?
Well, that's the thing, Evan. I feel like I'm an old head now. So like just going back to what we were saying, like everybody can do media and still get advertisers. That is true. So to say like Sun-Sentinel or Fort Lauderdale Magazine, it's like, no, I love those, but they now have to compete with like people like that or influencers or a Quora. So I wish I had something. I heard Medium is good.
It is
for blogging. And I believe WordPress has a higher SEO than Wix blog.
I believe it does. And we are looking to bring in more workshops with experts in this field. One of them is actually from Broward, the creative enabler, Luca. She just recently moved back to South Florida, and we are working on some workshops for creatives to help extend their reach more on the artist side, but I think it could apply to writers as well. So stay tuned for that. One last thing that I feel this is probably the opportunity for me to mention, and I don't think I've mentioned it on a podcast before, and I really haven't mentioned it that much publicly, but I did put it in the book. I was called to create an arts writing scholarship in memory of a friend and mentor of mine that unfortunately passed away a few years ago, that had a profound impact on my life and my journey early on. And she was a writer. She had a SFMO, South Florida Music Obsessed, where she covered concerts and shows. And she also was the PR director for 3 Points back in its early days. And she really helped guide me when I really didn't know which direction I was going in. And I saw the impact that writing and public relations had on her life and her career, that I want to, and I did, create this arts writing scholarship to give to an aspiring writer at her alma mater, which is University of Florida, so that this future Nile, future Evan Snow, could get a little bit of a leg up to hopefully help them, pay a little bit of the way for college. But the other goal with the scholarship is I'm going to look to give this recipient an opportunity to write and contribute for not only Choose 954 and our platforms, but I want to look to connect this person with some friends of ours and some friends of Lauren's, and maybe they'll get a chance to write about 3 Points, or other components of arts and culture that they find interesting. I did begin funding it. I put some money into it. I created it. I want to try to do another fundraiser to maybe get a little bit more in there, to have it make a bigger impact for this person. And I'll look to roll it out. I tried to roll it out last year at Lauderdale Art Week with a silent auction fundraiser for a piece of artwork that was provided by one of our artists, Bob Picard. But I ended up acquiring the artwork to fund the scholarship. So I'm going to try again, maybe just with a donation component this year, but it's called the quote unquote My Sweetest LP Arts Writing Scholarship in memory of Lauren Perlstein. So if any of that resonates with you and you want to help an aspiring writer, the next wave and generation of content contributors, and honor Lauren's legacy, you can feel free to reach out to me, and I'm certainly glad to share that with you. And thank you, Nile, for giving me the opportunity to share that here. That was in the book. I don't know if you recall that. But if they would like to connect with you, where can they find you on social media and the interwebs?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and Twitter, Facebook. It's just my name. Instagram, it's Nile_Fortner. Facebook, it's just Nile Fortner. Twitter, Nile_Fortner. I'm also on TikTok, once again, just my name. YouTube, it's just my name. And you can also email me at nilefortner@gmail.com. I'm not a hard guy to find.
This would be the opportunity. You are not a hard guy to find. He's pretty public and pretty social on the medias and the interwebs. This would be a good opportunity for me to ask you in closing, wrapping up here. Tell us about your fascination and interest with movies.
Yeah, I love movies. I've been going to the movies since I was a kid. You can find me at Cinemark on Sheridan Street pretty much almost every week. But that goes back to how I got into writing, actually. Like, I love stories. I love characters. And one day, I don't know what it was. I was just watching a movie one day, and I'm like, man, Rocky is the man. People have been cheering for Rocky since like the 80s or something. Why is it that people cheer for Rocky? And then I'm like, okay, we know his morals. We know his family. He's literally willing to fight for what he believes in. And then I said to myself, nobody is cheering for Rocky Balboa just because Rocky Balboa is simply a boxer. And then I'm like, okay, so I learned these things from movies, like Spider-Man, for instance. Nobody's cheering for Spider-Man just because, he puts on a mask. He saves people. He's a family man. He's in love. So I'm like, okay, I'm starting to realize that movies can be used or studied, and I can study them and apply that to my writing. So I said to myself, okay, let's give people a reason to cheer for a Evan Snow, or cheer for an Alexio Gibson, or cheer for a Frank McKinney. All these local people, the same way they would cheer for a Rocky Balboa. So when I write these things, it's like I think of them as characters, honestly, and why people would want to cheer them the same way they do these movie characters or these comic book characters. And anybody can have a flat Stanley of a character, meaning it's just a name and paragraphs. But when you say, where somebody's from, what inspired them, maybe you mentioned their family, maybe you even mentioned some of the difficult times and how they overcame the difficult times, that's a story. And I honestly learned that story structure, I believe, mostly through simply just going to the movies because my dad and mom would take me when I was a kid.
Amen. And if you do follow Nile on social media, you will see him checking in weekly, letting me know about films that were probably off of my radar. So as a film advocate, somebody that appreciates film, as film is a component of arts and culture, and an emerging, a thriving, budding part of the Broward arts and culture landscape. We do appreciate those contributions and all of your contributions to our community here in Broward County and Boca Raton and beyond. And we appreciate you joining us today. If you found any of this interesting, A, we appreciate it. B, you can feel free to reach out to me. I'm very accessible on the social media and the interwebs as well, at Evan Snow 13 personally, at learning.to.choose on the Instagrams, learningtochoose.com. If you want to find out more about the backstory, get some inspiration, not just my story, but learning lessons that I acquired, that I pose back to the reader in the form of questions to help them make maybe a series of choices outside of their comfort zone to unlock their hidden potential to change their life, their community, or their world. We think Learning to Choose makes a great gift for the holidays as well. And if you would like to join us in person at some future events, as I mentioned previously, we are still hosting Creative Zen every second Friday morning of the month inside the Cotilla Gallery at the Alvin Sherman Library on the campus of Nova Southeastern University. We're very serendipitously, as I mentioned, the digital art pioneer Lawrence Gartell, who happens to be my business partner's former college professor, will be sharing his thought-provoking, inspiring story January the 12th. The doors open at 8:30. The talk starts at 9. You're out of there by 10. Free coffee, some breakfast bites, guided meditation, hugs and high fives, networking, all included. And we will send you free parking at NSU if you RSVP on Eventbrite. So we're still glad to do that. And we're very excited that we have our 6th annual Lauderdale Art Week coming up, which is a Broward County-wide art week. You guys might have heard of this thing. It took place last week in Miami. Had 1 million people come in, created $1 billion economic impact called M.I.A Art Week, aka Art Basel. We have our own version in Broward County. Maybe not as big, maybe it doesn't have all the cool outfits, but we do have generally over 50 events between exhibitions, open studio tours, parties, art discourse talks, lectures, light projection shows, and a bunch of other musical performances, performing art performances in all 31 cities throughout Broward County that want to participate. We don't charge anybody to participate, so if you know an artist, an arts organization, institution, or venue that does have an event that takes place between the week of January the 20th through the 28th in 2024. You can find out more at lauderdaleartweek.com. The acronym and hashtag is Law24. And the campaign that we're getting ready to roll out here is people need to support the arts because it's the law. So we hope that picks up and gets people out and engaging with the arts, because the arts have had a profound impact on our lives, as we've kind of illuminated previously. If people aren't writing about the arts or covering about the arts, it's very tough for people outside of the arts to discover what's going on, what new things are happening, what cool things are happening in their community. So all of this, in closing, all contributes to living in a place where there are things to do, where there are culturally enriching experiences that contribute to the live, work, and play balance of life. Nobody wants to live in a place, especially in a beautiful place like Broward County, where you go to work, go home, rinse and repeat. You need to have things to do for the play element of live, work, and play. So we hope you learned a few new things today. I certainly hope you follow Nile and the beautiful work that he's doing. Support some of the places that he highlights and covers, like Tate's Comics. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're both open books. Appreciate you joining us today, Nile, and we'll see you guys at the next one. Cheers.
Was that pun intended? We're an open book. I like that.
Thank you. Good catch. Cheers.